Hey everybody, and welcome. That is Savik the Grid from Creative Commons Breaking Copyright. Creative Commons music, as I mentioned earlier, about copyright and fun stuff. That's just the little stream I got going right there from him. Or basically breaking copyright. Subscribe to these guys like that, and then I'll just leave that for that. But then subscribe, a bunch of nice music, help for your YouTube videos or anything like that. But let's get back to what we're talking about today. Today, we are looking at fixing of images, photo correction, and manipulation. Alright guys, so let us load up Photoshop and start today's lesson. It will start with the practical and move to the impractical. There is the cloning tool, the stamp tool as people call, that we will touch into for more manipulation. You can see that I've already gone through some of the stuff we'll be using today. So we are going to start here with this image. And we're going to talk a little bit about let's move character back to the front over here. We're going to show, first off, cleaning up an image. Color correction and grading in that. Video uses it to compensate for footage to make sure the footage all matches up. In photographs, let me know, there is actually just a photo studio, and there is a lot of tools for professional photographers that they use to help clean up their images. But I want to just show you what you can do in Photoshop in general. Now, first off, what most people might do is, here's your image, we go to image, we go to adjustments, and then we start playing around with adjusting the image. That is good, but if you make a mistake, it's like deleting. And remember in the last episode how much I said about how my opinion was on deleting stuff. There is another way to fix your image, and if you make a mistake, you still have the original image to work with. And again, layers is the key. So yes, you can do a general fix here, but you can get the same access to those functions down here. I'm just going to move my camera a little bit, or actually I can move this guy over a bit more. There we go. Alright, so down here at the bottom, there is the mask icon we were talking about briefly. Then we have this beautiful half circle. If you click on that, this helps create an extra layer that will affect everything underneath it. Again, whatever's on top. So in this case, we can create, let's go for Eric, evening for you, yes. So what we can do here is we can go to levels. And what we have created here is going to be something to allow us to play around with levels of light that we have in this image. This is the first part of correcting it. It is very washed out. And to crispen it up a little bit, here we've got a little graph that represents the layers of light. And you can see that the dark and the light are way off on the edges where there's no real information. As we drag those little icons in, we start to darken it up a bit. And with the light, we start to kind of bring back the levels of light in here. And I'm going to be careful, but I think I want to go around here. But at the same time, the middle information, we'll keep that still at the 1. We'll keep that in the middle. So we've kind of cropped in the edges for the light. And right off the bat, we can just, with the eyeball, just click on it. We can see we've already, with just playing around with the levels, fixed some of the problem with the image that we had. Then there's another thing down here. There's a lot of different features, but after you've done with the levels, you can play around with the exposure. Exposure. There we go. Oh, by the way, I hope you guys are loving the quarantine beard. It is actually a freaking huge beard. Well, for me, a big beard going on here, but not that much on the sides. It's more in the front, and if I shave the middle part, and I want to have those mutton stash, you know, things going on. There's not that much on the sides still. I mean, it's still light beard material where I want to keep the beard, and it's really good in the underside. It grows better in the shade. I don't know. So with exposure, we've got the properties here, and first off, the exposure is how long light was let into the image. This digitally, it's different now, but back in the day, the more you exposed photosensitive paper to the light, the more it would burn in. The less the faded it would. So of course, if you reduce, there wasn't enough light in the image, so you're getting it really dark. If you increase, it's getting way too burnt out, as it were. Like it just burnt up the whole piece of paper. So what we want to do is just bring the exposure up a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. And gamma. This is on your monitors. If stuff is too bright, you want to reduce it to get the, you want to gamma correct, which is, you know, you're going to reduce it here. And as you do, it's kind of darkening the image up already a little bit for us. And that is with the playing around with the exposure. There's another filter we can get called Vibrance. Say, Mish, if I say Star Killer, what do you think of? Not to derail. You just freaking derailed me super, because what do I think of when you say Star Killer? What comes to mind for me? Well, second thing. The first thing that came to mind, which I don't even know if it's the proper one, but Spaceballs, where jam is pouring out of the computer, and he's like, strawberry jam. There's only one person that would use strawberry jam to, right? Which isn't, I don't think it was Star Killer. I don't think his name was Star Killer. Star Killer was the original name. Was Star Killer the original name in Star Wars for Luke Skywalker's character? Well, General Star Killer, which was a character that became a mixture of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Raspberry and Lone Star. Raspberry, there we go. See, my brain was broken there. But Star Killer was like the original. General Star Killer was the kind of Obi-Wan type mentor character that was going to teach the young Skywalker in the original draft, I think, of Star Wars. I think. But that was a good derailing. Alright. Fill me in if that's what you were thinking or what's going on. I gotta get back into this mode. So Vibrance. Vibrance is basically gives more warmth or color to your image, but you want to be careful that you don't go too far with the Vibrance, or you get like over too much. Like that is just grayed out, but you want to put more color to her face because her face was a little pale, so that's the Vibrance. Saturation is how vivid the colors are. You don't want to screw this up too much because people will definitely notice if you bring the Vibrance. Like right now, look at that, too much. It's like, yeah. So we're going to bring that down to just above 0. Get a little bit of that yellow in her hair and the green in the back. So as you can see here, we have now just brought that up. So again, we're working with layers, so we're not affecting the original image. And right now, if you shift click from the top one to the bottom, it'll select all of those. And then if you hit the folder icon, you can now have it correction. So now you can see the corrections that you've done to your image. You can show it to your client, and if there's something they don't like, you can go back in and individually tweak the elements you played around with. That's the most important thing. Instead of just, again, clicking on layer 1, going to image, adjustments, and doing the same things here, when you do it with the drop-down menu, you're affecting the main image. John Sheridan, oh god, Babylon 5. Star Killer before that, John Sheridan. Well, technically before that, Lucas was first, because that was in the 70s, so we'll just say it there. But John Sheridan, that's Babylon 5. A great series until they went 1 or 2 more series more than the writer. The writer had a great idea for 4 series. He had to compensate for a problem with one of the actors and sickness, and he also had to extend his series 1 or 2 seasons beyond his vision, and you can tell because it's horrible after that. But the first 4 seasons, I think it was, were amazing. I love the Ranger. Freaking loved the Ranger. He was my favorite. Alright, so you don't want to use in-menu stuff because that will affect the image directly. The spin-off sucked. I didn't see the spin-off. Right? So basically, doing it this way, you've done them in separate layers. You'll also notice that when you do a layer, see this here? This icon, you guys remember that? That is a mask. That means right now it's nothing. We could use the mask, which I'm going to illustrate a little bit later, to apply the effects in specific areas. So, as you can see here, now let's just go back to our correction folder. If we turn it off, there was the original image we were working with. And now, with the simple little corrections we've done, we've kind of cleaned up and intensified the image that you see here. So, let's quickly go back over that because it was quick, fast, and not furious, because that would be a whole franchise to itself. But effectively, we came in, and the first thing we did was we went down here, of course, and we went to levels. And that brought us up this levels menu. We basically dragged in the edges to basically clean up and crispen the image. And that's what we did here. We crispened up the image, getting rid of that fade. That fade was happening because the range was quite broad for the levels, so it kind of fuzzed it or diffused it. And what we're doing is intensifying the lines, as it were, in there. If you're doing illustrations old school, this guy here, where you scan in an illustration that you have hand drawn, levels will make that a crisp black and white image, and not the manila looking colors and the different ranges of the pencil color. If you're using pencil, it will actually help crispen that up if you're doing any type of illustrations from scanning to Photoshop. The thing is, a lot of this generation, they're just going direct into the computer. They've learned how to draw and illustrate digitally, which is a different mindset, and I salute those people that have done it, because I've tried to transition over, but I'm such an old dog at this that it's kind of tough to learn new tricks. It's hard to though if you've got the money, you can actually have a beautiful tablet that you can actually draw on the tablet like a sketchbook. I'm talking about doing the old Wacom where you're drawing with your hand and looking up here. That's what I tried. And, if I got the money, there are tablets that you can actually just draw and illustrate on there, which are beautiful. Then the next thing we did was exposure, which effectively is how much we basically used it to correct for gamma. And the exposure, we increased its exposure a little bit to lighten it up a little bit. And then when we applied that, we got a nice, more of a better range of colors. The last thing we played around with in this case was vibrance, basically increasing the color quality and then the saturation, how vivid the colors are, and just a little bit on that. And with that last little bit, we've added a bit more color back into the image. Maybe a little bit too much, because right now this is pixelated because of the level. Can you see the little bits of yellow that are starting to show up here? That's a little too much. It's the vibrance I'm going to play with. No, I think it is my saturation. I think my saturation is still a bit too high. The saturation you got to be very careful with. Yeah, you want to bring that down a bit more, because you want to keep it in the character. There we go. But you got to be careful with that. But there, and you have created a mask. So we could actually, if we wanted to, mask out the stuff in the background to make sure it is not as vibrant as her. Let's do a quick illustration of that. Here's our vibrance that we've got, and we've got a mask to it. We have the mask layer selected, and then remember, white reveals, black hides. So I'm just going to do a brush here, and I'm with black right now. So, and I'm going to make this large so we can just do this quickly. Again, the square bracket keys, once you've got a brush selected, if you use them, they will enlarge or shrink your brush, the square bracket keys. So if I do this, oh, I've got the opacity at 45 because I was doing that thing in Photoshop. There we go. There we go. If we start to break this down, we're just going to cut out the vividness just a bit. We're going to go down to exposure as well, so we can start to see what we've done. You know, like now we get the exposures down, and then back to levels. If we go like this, we can actually see what the original image was like, and kind of create that weird kind of a ghosting around her, so that the background is out of focus more. Hair is a problem, dudes. I will show you a project where you can change the color of hair, but it, especially when they've got like wiry hair like this going on. So there we go. And let's go back to exposure and do the same thing. Kind of have her vivid, but we're going to make the background all faded. So we're using a mask to mask the environment around her. And oh, undo. Bap. What have I done? I have gone into mask mode. Nope, right here. I've clicked on it. Nope, 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 nope. Here we go. Yep, I've gone into mask mode. Down here we unclick it. There we go. Yeah, well, I had gone into mask mode, which is a red filter. That's what that red filter was showing you. I'll go into those type of masks another time. But there we go. So now, oops, we've got a little bit too much in our hair there. So X button will invert. Bring back some of that inner hair there. So what we've done now, if we take a look at the images, is this is the whole image, and we've just brought her up mostly and left the background. There's still some X button here. We've basically now kind of cleaned up her, but left the background all diffuse and out, which is an effect you might be wanting to go for. And X again, because I have gotten into her hair here. There we go. Again, here's another little view. This is what we worked with. We brought her out a little bit, and we've kept the background kind of diffuse. And that's a quick example of doing a bit of correction for your own work in images. So one of the worst things that we always had when I was working with the term, we'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post-production. We'll fix it in post-production. That's a pain in the butt. Kind of correct. I also did some of this on video, Avid and After Effects a bit, and you have to correct for an entire line of stuff. At least with photographs, you're correcting for one. And as I mentioned before, you could also set up what the little teardrop thing, where you could just drag and drop, and if you fixed one photo and they were all the same, you could just drag the entire line of photos in, and it would apply all the different settings, levels, this, that level. But this is one example of what we can do with playing around. So this image here, we're just going to save right now. We're just going to save this. Save it. And we're just going to call it corrections. Bang. We're just going to call it corrections for now. Now, I also had a few other images in that folder that I was going to pull from. Grading. Alrighty. And from another sci-fi series, here's Claudia Black. By the way, you know, this is, of course, professional photography. This image is copyright, so I'm not going to sell it, mass produce it. I'm just using it to illustrate cleaning up and fixing up an image. Again, here's Claudia Black from Farscape, or later on, she was in Stargate. And there's a little bit of a saturation issue with this. So again, instead of just going up to image and adjusting it and physically changing the image itself, Hamdog, where did you learn this stuff? Alright, Hamdog, where did I learn this stuff? I actually taught Photoshop professionally for 6 years in Toronto, Ontario, at the CBC building, in one of the college departments that was in that building. The International Academy of Design and Technology, from the States, mind you. And sadly, that was one of the reasons I lost my job, was when the U.S. had its big recession a while back in the early 2000s. They had to close some of their Canadian campuses, and I left. Before that, I did do some freelance work as well for DJs, a couple of club owners, and all that for working on stuff. And before that, I was a peon in a small multimedia company that was growing up. They were creating these CD-ROMs back in the day when that was just becoming the industry, and it wasn't Flash. It was called I actually forgot what it's called now. The precursor to Flash. I was trained in that. But basically, you might have seen them in the airports. Those cheesy CDs that have like a gun collection magazine or bathing suits or a quick little catalog thing. I was working for that, creating interfaces for the CD-ROMs. Back in the day, Network, which did Sarah McLachlan's stuff, did Trent Reznor, and did a few other albums. They started creating interactive CD-ROMs where you could put the music CD in your computer and do stuff. That was the industry I was in way back in the ancient days. Now everything's online and etc. But that's part of where I got my training and stuff from, understanding it. And I'm passionate. I used to love black and white photography, which back in the day, it was expensive to try and get your own studio, your own darkroom, and the chemicals and all that kind of thing. And then Photoshop, back really early, did have the ability to convert color images to black and white. Better than there's film that they had at the time that could convert images to black and like it was a black and white film, but it could go through a color processor, but it still had an orange tinge. It was weird, but Photoshop became a passion, and I was about to show you, I also could love creating art in Photoshop. So it was a job, and it was a hobby, and it's a passion, so Photoshop is my main bread and butter. I was also Adobe certified back in the day. I had you needed to have 3 programs to be familiar with, and they were Photoshop, Illustrator, and After Effects. I have not followed through with Illustrator or After Effects, so if I was asked to teach a course in it, I wouldn't feel too comfortable because I haven't used them as much as Photoshop. But you asked me to teach Photoshop? Yes. The place where I was teaching, they wanted me to teach After Effects, but I didn't feel comfortable. I would be a teacher that if the students read the book, they could be one step ahead of me, and I didn't want to be that teacher, so I was a teacher's assistant, where I could help them in labs because I knew enough of the software to help them in labs. But for Photoshop, oh yeah, I just love this. So, I've never thought I'd have to say this, but come on guys, let's play with Claudia Black for a second. So, as I was saying, you don't want to actually adjust and play around with the image. What you can do is, again, use these. So, as we said, this image is a little oversaturated, so let's go check the levels on this first. Bring the levels up. the levels look a lot different than our last image. That's because we've got a lot of stuff in the black. Let me just, in the black. We'll stop with the cloudy black for absence. So there's a lot here. So if we bring this up, we got to be careful, because watch what's going to happen to the image here as we do this. We'll just drop to a point where, boom, it starts becoming a bit too... We're playing around with the levels this way. And the middle one is more of the middle range is something we're looking at playing with. And if we bring in the lights, she gets washed out. So you want to try and keep... The levels aren't that much of a concern, it would seem, as just taking a look at this, right? We haven't had to do that much at all with the levels. So what else is there? Well, let's take a look at the exposure. You know, under and overexposed. I mean, none of these really seem to be an issue here. Gamma correction. It's just not going to do too much for us here. So we're going to actually get rid of this exposures. We're not going to play with that, drop it in the trash. But we are going to look at the vibrance and saturation again. Vibrance. And if we now play around with the vibrance and the saturation, you will notice now there's a bit too much color in this. You never thought you'd say it, but now as we just tweak that down a little bit, and now we go back, like let's again stick these two in a folder, and I did a shift click, and just like you do when you're working with Word and that, and then we hit the folder up here, and if we turn that folder off, can you see already? Like, here's the image, it's kind of pale. We turn the folder on, we've cleaned up the image, and it wasn't a case of overexposure or anything like that. It was actually a bit too saturated. The colors were too bright. So we had to tone down the colors to compensate for that and kind of create that tonal range that's a little crisper and cleaner. So in this case, it was reducing what was put into it rather than putting it on, like going on. So that's another thing you have to take a look when you're going onto this. And we'll just save this as black work. I don't know. All right. So those are examples there. Let's grab something else. We're on a roll now. Let's do this. Oops, that didn't work. Let's go drag a painting in here. Arian. I was just saying, yeah. Yeah, from Farscape or Fargate. I'm just joking. Stargate, because it got to the point where it was almost far. Like, here's another example. This is an old painting. This is taken from a textbook, I think. This painting was taken from a textbook. There's a grainy feature in here that's kind of tough to get doing. Stargate 1. Actually, Stargate... No, 1? She didn't show up in Stargate until like second season, like later in the season, when they started losing some of the original characters, like the original MacGyver. All right, so with this guy here, we have got. Let's take a look at the levels again. Again, you can see that you might want to tweak in the darks a little bit more. And grab this light slider, bring it up to that first little tier, maybe around here. Then we're going to go to vibrance, and again look at this, the saturation and vibrance. Ooh, see too much? You don't want to screw around with that. Color balance. This is hard to play with. Color balance color balance is actually playing around with the CMYK, the elements of the image itself. Like if there's too much red or too much yellow in the image, like there's a little bit of the if we go a little bit more cyan to compensate for the reds. There's a bit of a reddish overtone, so you go for the opposite color to kind of compensate for that. I don't know if it's more green for the magenta. Oh, we don't want to play around with that too much, it would seem. No. And then yellows and blues. The blues would be more in the darks that we got here, so if we put a little bit more yellows into it, you can start tweaking the colors themselves. This is a degraded image as well, so there's only so much you can do. But if we take a look at what we've kind of played around with so far, put it into a folder, turn that off. You get rid of the washed out, you got a little bit more of it, but you can only do so much. Let's just crop you. Oops. Let's do that crop again. And just, you know, I got it set for a square, you see, so. Now, filters. There are, oh, we got the group selected, the image. Now, filters will apply to the image you want. So one thing you might want to do when you do any type of change to your original image is make a copy of it. Background copy, rename it what you want. Because, again, you try not to manipulate the original image as much as possible when you're in a project, because you might have to take it back. If you are the client, you see your final results and you're happy with them, sure. But if you're working for a client, it is really good to be able to show them, this is what it was, this is what I've done, and if they want something tweaked, you can then tweak it without having to reload the image and redo everything you did individually all over again. Now, there are a few, we have not really gotten to play around with filters. Photoshop is also known for a crap load of filters, ways you can do that. And one of the problems we have right now is, noise. We have noise in that image, and they do have stuff like reducing the noise. Like right now, it shows you in real time that little pixelation that we got. It's got the preview to it. And you can increase the strength and remove JPEG artifacts. Bang. That is little lines left by the JPEG type of thing. And you can play around with the sharpened details. If I go too far, can I go too far to illustrate something? No, it's actually too little. Yeah, it's actually doing a nice job right now. So it's just, you can see how strong. Preserve the details. I want the details preserved a lot. Reduce color noise, that's what we have, a little bit of the interference there. And then sharpen the overall details. If you go too far, you'll get pixelation of its own. See that? See that? That horrible pixelation happening on there? But you pull that back down. 25 is a nice one. What's the default? And we go OK. And if we turn off that image, can you see we have kind of gotten rid of some of the pixelation, but we've lost some of the detail in her face when we've done that, so we've already made a mistake. See how we've lost some of the color and detail in the cheeks when we've done the sharpen, because it's kind of blurred the pixels to get rid of that pixeling effect, but it also lost some quality. So this is an example why we go, no, I'm not happy with that, drag that to the trash can. And you got to look at trying to fix that, but watch the face detail. So we go back, make a copy, and then with that copy we can go back to the filter and go to noise and reduce noise, and realize we want to maintain the face, so the strength maybe is a bit too much. Preserve the details. Kind of reduce some of this, or reduce the noise, the color noise. There we go, yes. We want to keep the color in her face, that's what was missing. So we reduce this, we preserve the details maybe a little bit more. And then we go OK. And now, if you take a look, we lose the black of her eyes though. So, what can we do if we like what we've got, but we're missing bits of what we want? So what we can do is, this is a mask. Make a mask. Have this layer selected and put a mask on it. Now that we have a mask, we can go in and we are, let's try the tool. So what we've done is we've smoothed the image up, but we've lost some details in the face we're not happy with. So what we can do is, if you hold down the Alt button and scroll with your mouse wheel, we'll move in. And we've got a mask. Black will hide. And I need this to be a little smaller in size. But if we just click and mask, we can start bringing in some of those facial details that we lost, because we're masking out the smoothness that happened. Same with this guy's face. There's a little bit of the details in the face, so we just mask. You can see down here the small little black dots where we're creating a mask. So we still have the face, the child. I may have not noticed anything, but there we go. We've got some red in the child that we needed. I hate to say this, cleavage, but some of the little finer lines that may have been lost, we can mask out where we want and mask it, what we don't want. So now her face is preserved and the background noise is done. So this is where we start showing you. Thank you. Man's a good teacher. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now when you're looking at this, we're now starting to show you how you can do effects, and then with masks move in and out of the effects. And that is a nice segue to the second part. We've shown you some ideas. So a review. It's always best to never apply changes to the original art if you can. When we're doing color correction or other items like we just did here, this icon down here creates a layer, and everything below it on that layer will be affected. This is also good if you have an image that is composed of 3 or 4 layers. Matrix. They have a green overlay when they're in the matrix over everything. If that was the case, you could have a color saturation filter above all your images and just say they had multiple layers. Like I'm just doing this from a Photoshop point of view, not really a video point of view. But if you wanted everything, like say you put a picture of a guy standing in a city and you added rain, so you got rain on one layer, you got a guy on one layer, and you got a background on another layer, and you put those together. If you put a color correction filter at the very top, its effect will affect all the layers. And because all the layers are affected similarly, it also gives a bit of a grasp that it's the same image. When you're doing those pictures of you in Tahiti, even though you're not really in Tahiti, but there's a lot to do to make it look really good as a photo. Light source, shadows, positioning of the sun. Basically, if you take a picture of yourself inside a house with incandescent lighting, it's not going to have the same colors or lights that you'd have if you're standing out in the real sun. So, if you're going to take a picture of yourself in Tahiti, make sure you're taking a picture of yourself outside on a sunny day at least. But besides that, if you were to put a color gradient over a color filter over everything, then it looks like it was taken at the same time. It's a little thing they have there. So when we did go to the different layers and vibrance and all those, I just showed you a few of these. And there's a lot more that can go on. There's actual color balance, black and white. If you're taking a color image, converting it to black and white, you can tweak and control every aspect of a color and how it looks in the grayscale of black and white, which is beautiful. Like when I shot for black and white when I shot in color to convert to black and white, I'd have to visualize what certain colors would look like in black and white. And with this now in Photoshop, it's amazing. You can actually control that. So if the guy had a shirt on that doesn't look as good in black and white, you can fix it by taking the color of his shirt and adjusting it. And if need be, creating a mask. So if you just wanted to adjust how his shirt looked, but not, like say he had a blue shirt and you wanted to adjust that, you could mask it so you only have his shirt exposed. And other pieces of blue would stay whatever they wanted to. when you're doing that type of thing. I hope I'm not losing you here, guys, but this is, and then I group them into a folder just for convenience, right? And you'd call it like correction or whatever. So again, if we take a look, here was our original image, and then here is the image that we fixed up. So we've got the Rembrandt done. The Rembrandts, bum 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 bum. Sorry. All right, the Rembrandts. So we're just going to save that project as the Rembrandts. I spelt it wrong, but who cares? All right. So these are projects that I've shown you, and I've had, you know, this is like how you fix things up. As you can see here, you can see a hint of where we're going next, because the next step is using layers. Oh wait, I had another image I wanted to bring up. There we go. Here we go. Here's another image. We're going to use this beautiful image to once again play around with colors, saturations, but we're also going to illustrate how to change colors in an image. So here we go. First off, this is our background image, and we want to fix this image first. So what we're going to do here is we are again going to do our usual. Let's check the levels out. Levels right here. Let's see. Watch what's happening with the image as we just bring this image in. Right there, that's cleaned up the image a little bit right off the bat. So we got the levels done. Then let's go to exposure. I don't know if we're going to need to tweak the exposure that much. Gamma correction. Bringing the gamma down makes it darker. So we're darkening it up a little bit. I don't think we need to play with exposure, but the gamma's being reduced a bit. And then we go to vibrance. And in vibrance, we are going to, let's take a look. Let's bring the vibrance up a little bit. I'll push it to the max. Right? Wow, that's actually not bad for the max. You know what? I think actually that's pretty good. The vibrance, the saturation, I don't think we need to tweak with that too much. See, I'm at like a +5, +6, and there we go. And we just go done. And again, since vibrance is the top layer, I'm going to the bottom layer and I'm holding the shift button down. I click, they're all selected. Then I click the folder icon. Bang, it's a folder, and we can call this group correction. Correction. So this is the correction information. Bang. And again, original image, fixed. Original image, fixed. Quick, simple, vibrant. But let's go one step further. Let's do something else with this image. We're going to create a new a layer, and we're going to play with the hue and saturation. So in hue and saturation, this is separate to the corrections. This is where you can change the color of things as well by adjusting what hue it is. It also has a saturation control like we were playing with. We also have a lightness and darkness, which is a little bit like the gamma we were playing around with. But what I want to do is illustrate a few things that can be done. Again, it's got its own mask. So let us try and play around with, say, this is going to be tough because of the strands of hair. Now, taking a fact, I'm going to show you a quick and dirty version, but if you've got the time, and I'll show you some of the images I've done with hair. Hair is a pain in the ass to do. It's constantly shrinking and moving your brushes. It's a bit of a selection tool because of the fibers, and then, yeah, it's tough to do here. But what we're going to do here is let's play with the eye color. So what we're going to do here, there's a couple things we can do. I'm going to show you this version first. Yes, I am. I'm confident on this. So now, as you can see, the rest of the image is totally being warped as we do this kind of stuff. So look at that. Look at those violet eyes, right? So here we go. The rest of her looks like an alien. but the eyes are this beautiful violet. So how can we take this across? So what we're going to do is we got the mask selected, and we are going to get a paint bucket and just fill this with black. Bang. Then make sure the mask is still selected. If you hit the X button, it will flip around to white. Go back to your brush, and then Alt button will allow you to scroll. And now, if we use the brush, we can start painting in that effect. And you can reduce the opacity, so you can do it as a slight, every time you click it's a certain thing. I've got it at 100% right now. But if I just paint with it at 100%, and since we are working with the original image here, can you see what we've done here? There we go. So now if I zoom back out, we're converting your eyes to a different color based on a saturation, a hue level, where we can just paint in the color that we selected. So now her eyes are violet. There is another way to do it as well. Playing like hue's good. When I show you some of the effects I did, hue is one way of doing it. I'm just going to trash this layer, show you a different way. Trash. Another way to do it is you create a new layer, and on this layer you're going to make it color, meaning all that's going to be kept is the color. You pick the color you want. Like I've got a really bright green here. This is not probably going to work. Let me see. And I'm just going to hit fill. Bang. Right? There is green. Too much green. And now we just create a filter. Bang. We create a mask over top of that. We do our little fill the mask in. And that green's a little obnoxious, but we'll show you how we can work with it. So we go back in and we're going to paint in. We're going to paint in the green of the eyes through that color filter. This is where you get a little bit more of the unnatural kind of green going. Again, I am just doing this quickly. Square brackets again will shrink down your brush or increase its size. So now we've got, oops, if you hit the X button, you will flip the colors around, so I can get rid of that little mistake I made there. And then I go X again to use the green. And because it's a color overlay, it's going to maintain the luminosity and colors underneath it. Let me make this a bit bigger again. Make that smaller again. So as you can see here, guys, we are now making the eyes of, it's a vivid green, mind you. And we pull back. It's a little supernatural green going on there. It almost kind of gives you that glowing green eyes almost. But what you can do is have that layer selected and control its opacity right here. And as we reduce the opacity, there you go. It starts to lose that extreme glowing green issue that I had. You can even make it more subtle, like 25% or whatever. But there's one thing that's bothering me, guys. Right here. These pixels here. I was able to notice it. Let's go back to the mask. And white reveals, black hides. We got to clean these pixels up. They were affecting the edge of her eye, and that was bothering me. There we go. Now that looks better. It doesn't. The eye doesn't look like it's bleeding into it as much. But we've now changed the eye color. Like if we turn that off, bang, bang. We can still play around. Like for instance, now that we've got the right luminosity and all that, we can actually just go here and actually physically change this and go to image, adjustments, hue and saturation. We've got it set at green, but now we can start moving that around to get whatever kind of eye color you want for her. Changing that green layer to whatever type of color you want. And also, like, let's go more blue. Can we get more blues going on here? Like aquamarine blue. There we go. Saturation can make it how vivid or how light, like steel gray eyes right there. That is the saturation. And again, lightness and darkness. That will just wash out the colors that you got going on there. But now you've got this layer, and we've got this nice little kind of thing going on for the eyes. You could also do the same thing with lipstick. You can do the same thing with hair color. Hair color is tough. I'll do a quick example with her hair, but let's make another layer. Bang. What type of layer are we? And taking the fact, the correction is still there too. The correction for the image is still there. We're painting on top of the corrections right now. Alrighty, let us just... she's a pale skin. Redhead is coming to mind, right? And, you know, you've got your natural redheads and you've got your orangey redheads. So if we had that, we filled this layer, blup, and then we change it to, and not saturation, color. I'm wondering, no, it's not going to work that well. Yeah. It's gonna, we need the full. Just the color. And if we mask again, create a mask layer. That's a real layer. My bad. Mask. There we go. My mask. Working overtime, fighting crime. All right. There we go. And then we get the paintbrush. And I'm going to zoom in a bit here. And to be honest, trying to get the right hair colors. So, but as you can see, you can start painting in her hair color. Now, of course, this is too orange right off the bat, right? But what we're going to do is paint in some of the hair color. Right. We are going to paint some of that in. And remember how we changed the eyes on the fly to try and get the color we wanted? We're going to do that with the hair. Again, we're painting with a mask, effectively. And I've just gone a bit over. And I'm going to Alt over, X, hit the X button, get rid of some of that fell onto her jacket there. Yeah. See what I mean about the little loose wisps and all that you're going to have to worry about? Alrighty, and then X again, and then make that a bit smaller. with the bracket keys again, guys. There we go. There we go. We're just going to leave that. I'm not going to work with the edges too much right now. I'm just kind of want to do this. There we go, just to get a bit going. So, and then we're going to zoom out a little bit. And the hair itself is almost good to go. Like for a nice orangey kind of color. Like, let's see it. Let's, okay. The perfectionist in me. Here we go. We're going to just go back in a bit more. We're going to just we're just going to we're gonna make some mistakes, aren't we? We learn from making mistakes. Unless you're Oppenheimer, you don't want to be making mistakes. Alrighty, so here we go. Let's hit the X button. Clean up some of that orange we put on our skin. We don't want that. This is a crappy little job I'm doing right now. So whoops, around the edges there. And then we go back over. And we're going to hit X. We're going to make this a big brush because, you know, we're just painting in the color right now. There we go. Oh, no. Oh, we'll fix that later. Yeah. Just painting in the orange, and then X to clean up that spot that I did. Space bar to get the hand. X to flip it back to the orange. I mean the flipping it back to white to reveal for a mask. There we go. Alrighty, and then X is by Alt. That's why I keep saying Alt. And I'm just going to clean up some of the phrase and all that stuff. So now, if I pull out, please hold back on the root comments. All right, there we go. Get some of the roots going on here. That's going to, these little strands here, because they're dark, you can probably get away with leaving them there still, because you still have those dark. So it's the beginning. The top part with the dark is really good, but where she was really light blonde, it's very kind of off-putting. But right now we've done a quick one. We can now go to the color, the actual layer itself. Oops. And this is where we can manipulate it like we did the eyeballs. We go back to image. We are affecting the color itself because, you know, you can always just put a color back in and start from scratch. It's the image itself, all the information, the lights, the darks, you don't want to affect if you can help it. Hue, saturation. So here we go. That orange is very vivid. So if we brought the saturation down, now watch, look at this. If we do it too far, we're losing a lot of it. So we bring it down a little bit. Bring it up. We want a little bit of that orange in there. I think I'm bringing it down too much. Just 10, 15s, 20. Let's say 20. 20. Lightness and darkness, right? If I bring that down a bit, as you can see, it starts to get washed out to nothing. If I do it higher, it gets washed out in the other direction. So lightness and darkness right now for a color doesn't really matter as much. You're going to wash your thing out too much. And then the hue is effectively, you know, let's put you back to 0. And then the hue, of course, is the actual orange that we chose. If we shift it a little bit to the left and the right, we start going into the other spectrums of colors. That's 0. That goes a little bit too yellowy blonde. This will go a bit too much red, I do believe. The closer we go, we'll be getting closer to red. Like, we could go all out pink cotton candy. So, there we go. And we go, okay. So now we've got our hair a little bit going. The bottom part of our hair is still bothering me. But in a quick nutshell, we can show you that painting with a mask can allow for visual effects. We could change the color of our jacket. That might be better as a hue shift. Let's do that again. A new layer. It's going to be hue and saturation as a color layer, and in it we are going to change the color of the jacket to a green, right? We're going to do it that way, and we're going to then get a mask. We're in mask mode already. The mask is selected. Paint bucket, black it, and then get the paintbrush out and make sure you're painting with white. And we could add the jacket color change, but we are definitely going to have to play with the vividness of it. And again, where the hair is going to be, that's such a that's why you love those model pictures where they have their hair tied up in a little bun. So what's this jacket look like in red? What's this jacket look like in green? Alrighty. So effectively we are painting the jacket green that she's wearing. Again, if you want to do it in smaller taps, you can reduce, like I'm just going to go up to the edge there and then fix this. You can reduce the opacity up here on the top, so when you click once it's doing one level, and I'm going to hit X to flip and get it out of her hair here. Try and get and make that small, kind of clean up the and make that. Control Z is undo. So now we've got a green jacket on, and I think there's a bit of green jacket. Oh wait, Control X. There we go. I think there's a little bit. Yep, a little bit of jacket being revealed right here. Small shape. You gotta make sure we get that jacket. Alrighty, right around the edge here. Yeah, it's a little tough there. I gotta clean that up. X. I could zoom in a little bit more and fix this up a bit more, but we'll leave that for now. We'll get that, you know. But if we zoom back out, she's got a green jacket on now. We can play around with said jacket under opacity. We can play around and reduce the opacity, which will affect the color because it'll mix with the red underneath it, which will make a really horrible color. There we go. And under hue saturation, we can also play around with the saturation. We can reduce that green so it's not as bright. Hey JC, how are you doing? So if you take a look at what we've done now with painting with a mask, all right, doing good, doing good. So let's take a look at the original here, guys, and step by step, bang, 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 bang. So here's our original image. I'm doing good, Jay. Good, Jay. And then we did a folder of effects. Instead of affecting the image directly, we created a folder. Well, we created these effects and put them in a folder. And then this is the image that we corrected. That's the original image. That's the image we corrected. Then we played around. We didn't label our layers like we should have. Let me put this in eyes. Eyes. Then we changed her eye color. Right? We did that little effect that I showed you to change her eye color. The hair still needs work, but then we did the same thing. We did hair. And we changed her hair color. And then we using a hue saturation change, we did the jacket color change. We changed the color of her jacket. And that's what we're doing. So that is the beginning of how you can start using masks to change color and other minor elements in an image. Alrighty, and we're just going to label this one and save colors. Color changes. There we go. So, is there anything else left? We do have another image here. I think we did enough with this image to show you the illustrations. So again, from the stop, never delete or never write over the original image, especially if you're working for a client. Doing it this way, you still have the original image, and everything you've done is separate to the image. So if the client says he doesn't like it, you don't have to get the image in and redo everything to the image except for the one thing he wants changed. Photoshop allows you to work with layers to fix and change as needed. Now I want to show you guys the evolution of a project like that. And corrections, alrighty. Let me just close that. Sure, we'll save those color changes. Alright. This, now we're missing one element. I have not yet shown you the cloning tool or the patch heal tool, where it basically can remove and manipulate parts of an image. But besides that, nearly the rest of the following image was done with painting. This here, let me turn off this image. All right, that is the final image that I created from that image. All right, that is S. Kalin. She's I think she was like a wrestler and model and stuff, but that's the original image, and I changed it to that using a lot of layers. So here it is. Here is the breakdown. This does not include the cloning tools that I used, right? I created a bunch of these little layers like I showed you. The first little thing I did on the main is I did a color shift. I shifted the color of her skin, and then I painted in this top part of the head and part of the ear was removed using other tools, but showing what we've just shown you with masks, here's an example. Then I painted, then I took the image and I did lights. I did a lighter version, and then using the brush strokes I started painting a jawline, parts of the head, all that stuff with a different color, a lighter color. Then I painted in the dark, the underside, the reverse shadows, where the gills are. I painted all the stuff onto the skin. Fun fact, the gills I use, see this part of the ear that is not used in the final image? I copied and pasted and put the parts of the ear to create the look of the gills. That was a little thing I did there. Then I changed the color of things. I changed the eyes, I made the lips, and I even put some of the purple, like veining, drawn in on this layer, again using a mask and using doing not 100% for the brush. The opacity of the brush I reduced to like 25%, so I do a little bit at 25. Then I highlight bits of it darker. So that's what we get for the purple. Then that scale level. Do you remember when I was first telling you about layer styles? I said that you could reduce the fill opacity so the visual effect stays, but the actual color is gone. So I'm painting with a visual effect. I used bevel and emboss, and I used a special scale bevel and emboss texture. And I put that on, and as you see, I paint this little design. So basically I've created this scaly-like look on the skin. Then I played around with the color balance, shifting it to that purpley color that I did before. So that is the breakdown of the alien itself that I created. The final image here. Now, first off, there we go. I got an underwater image. I got an underwater image with coral and God's rays. This was the image I showed you, plus some cloning tools and that to put the gills on, to get rid of her hair, her nose, right? So we've got this kind of alien look to her. And then I put an overlay. Remember I told you if you put something over top, it sometimes makes it easier. I put this kind of a cloudy overlay, so it kind of helps put her into the picture a little bit better, as both her and the picture have the same overlay. Then bubbles. When I show you visual effects, I will show you how to make bubbles. And I created bubbles, and I also put them out of focus and put other bubbles to create the sense of bubbles. Some of the bubbles are coming from her gills, just some other bubbles are in the water. Then God's rays. You can see in the background that there are rays of light. So I added my own God rays into the image. I would tweak them a little bit now. I'm a little particular on them, but basically I've created some more God rays. I twist them a little bit over top, and then I played around with the levels, and I darkened and created a little bit more of a thing, and that is a major example of everything I've been showing you to convert to basically there we go, to basically convert. Oh, what? Oh, boop. Alrighty, I see what I did there. Bang. Control click. Nope, it's Alt click. Yes, Alt click will turn off every eyeball except for the eyeball you clicked on. So, change that to that. And all of that was not affecting the main image as much, except for the cloning tool when I did that, but using these different effect changing layers. We will go into the cloning tool next session, and that'll be stuff like putting images together using the cloning tool, using other effects under the filter effects that we haven't even touched on yet. But this basically, I want you to understand the basic principles of how to do simple changes, how the layers work, and certain kind of ways of handling yourself with this type of work. Alrighty, and did I have anything else left? Correction. No, I think if I close this, no, I do not want to save. I think I have a few other things that I had pulled up from earlier to show you guys. Bang, here's another example of me playing around. And let me just go Control and click. Oops, Alt, it's Alt. Alt click. There's the original image. And this image is closer to what we were just talking about, though. The alien one. I should have ended with the underwater alien one. But this one's a bit closer to what we were just talking about changing the environment. For instance, here we've changed her eyes to green. We're making her Irish. You see, we've made her eyes green. Her hair, we've got that fiery orange kind of going. That took me a bit to do, but that's her hair that we've added in there. We've lightened her skin so she's not as tanned. We lightened her skin so she's not as tanned. I could adjust that now. This is my being critical of myself. And then her lips we threw in. We just did a bit of her lips with all the different layers. And then her bikini top. It's a bluish black kind of reflective, but we've changed it so it's green. So it's like a green material. From the original black, we changed it green. Then we put a little bit of an Irish flag kind of coloration in the background there. And then it was a little too pale. So with levels, I brought the edges in. And that's an example of basically, again, painting with layers and doing the different effects to go from that, from basically that to that. effectively. So, this isn't as long as my other sessions, but I hope you enjoy. Next week, hopefully I'll not be doing it every other week. Stuff's always been coming up, but I'm hopefully going to get this. The next session we're going to be doing is more concentrated in photo manipulation. Using the cloning tool, the patch tool, to remove things, to increase. I don't know if we're going to get it, but also even body shaping, which is a big thing that the advertising companies are known for, and it's gotten a lot of bad press because effectively they're taking photographs and then manipulating the image more. You might have seen some of the extremes where they've taken a large lady and slimmed her down to a model type status, or doing the reverse and all that kind of thing, which is available for some of the tools in Photoshop. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but next week will be more manipulation of the image. I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, as this grows, check out my YouTube channel where we have these videos posted. And please post a suggestion in YouTube. Hey, I would like to see this. Can you show me that? And I would love that. And for the YouTube side, hit subscribe and like. And I'm not really a heavy YouTube person. I'm using it as storage on Twitch where it's live. Check me out on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Mishlof, MISHLOF. Thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you next week for another session of Photoshop 101.